All right, we'll try this again. I don't know if you saw that opening. That's hilarious. Okay, so not a great start. Anyway, to reiterate, here for the second time as I try to get this all set up in a way that's going to work. All right, sorry for that all that jumbling around. We're not going to really do the Nordic Disciples of Christ thing yet, like an hour of, church. But I am going to start doing, or trying to start doing now, every Tuesday at 5, an hour. I don't know if this one will be an hour, but let's just start with a regular schedule, and then we'll just, open with a spiritual thought or topic for the week or something. Discuss some of the politics. That's also why I want to get it started. We're going into the ramp up here to the political season, and it's a very important time. And, especially with the way, one of the things that's kind of motivated me to get it going again now is just this really strange narrative shift that's going on, and, just the major things that are happening. So I want to address some of that. And then there'll be, as the season picks up back up, we'll have some more of the farm or the homesteading content. That's all still moving forward. So, and then weekly church updates as that progresses. So we get back into working on the church. And, who knows, maybe this year we'll make it to do the free nativity play for Christmas. So that's the big goal, as you all probably know if you've been following my content over the years, which is not many people, but just if you have been. I guess the way that I'm not going to really open with a prayer and stuff yet. Again, that would be more on the Nordic Disciples of Christ page anyway. This is going to be just more like a content show, a weekly content show, kind of like a public access show kind of thing or whatever. Not really, specifically spiritually directed. So I'm not going to open it with a prayer because it's not, everything could be opened with a prayer, certainly. Just not that kind of specific content. So anyway, but I do think it should open every week with kind of a spiritual thought and something I was just thinking about recently that had come up. I've been very interested in Catholicism recently, and one of the things I think, maybe the only thing really, I don't think Mormonism really does a good job of explaining is kind of where people doing like these evil things, like these Epstein things and all this other stuff that's going on, like where that stuff comes from, because when I, as a human being or as a person, when I think about people who do those kinds of things, right, like that's definitely not the same thing that I am as a being, and maybe, and that's what, not that if there's anything that I kind of have, there's some stuff in Mormonism that's kind of Judeo-Christian, and you all know how I feel about that. So I don't have like a strong testimony of that stuff, but I do see the value in it and things like that, and it's all fine or whatever. But one thing that I've always wondered about is, in Mormonism, everybody's born good. Everybody's good that's here. Kind of our theology is that, if you're here, you were good at some point because you got to come here. So I have trouble with that sometimes, like everybody's good or whatever. And, ultimately everybody goes to heaven pretty much, except for the few people who like intentionally side with Satan and go to outer darkness, which they basically just cease to exist, or they're alone in the cold for eternity, basically. Which is same as hell, like away from Jesus and away from God and just away from everything. So, anyway, talking to the Catholics lately, their explanation was, like they thought that the specific thing that I was told was that it's demons. Like, kind of everything of the evil stuff you do is demons. Like, basically you're possessed by a demon making you do these bad things or something like that, or there's a demon. I don't know. And I know in Mormonism also, there's demons and stuff. I don't really get like super into that stuff. So, anyway, my kind of thought has always been, because I don't think there is like a concrete answer that I hear from religion really about that I find, compelling for me. But to me, I've always kind of viewed it like kind of like Avatar, right? So there's this earth, this realm, and there's these beings here, whatever these are, right? And that our souls, and maybe that's even why the Jews put that hat on their head or something, but our souls are basically like avatared into these bodies, and that we are actually in heaven, and we've always been in heaven. I don't think that our souls, people say there's a soul inside your body and this and stuff. I guess I don't really see that. I don't see it like our souls are not really in this. Like, our souls are eternal, so they're not bound by time, and this place is bound by time. So, like, our bodies are bound here, but our souls are not really here. They're, like, avatared in. And so, even though it's a dangerous thought, and I get why people don't like that thought, and I don't really like that thought, I've kind of considered that some of the beings that are around me don't have a soul avatared into them. They're just animals. They're not much different than the animals. That they're more on instinct or animalistic things, or, But, again, that's very dangerous thinking. And, anyway, just, so that was something I was thinking about, so I thought that I'd throw that out there as a spiritual thing to kind of think about, or look into your personal faith about, like, what does my religion say about that? How does my faith explain how we're all children of God, or we're all good, or we're all whatever, but yet, yet we still do these things. Some people do these things. Because I don't know. I don't see myself as being, just in raising 4 kids too. Like, each kid has basically been the same since they were born, and I feel like I've basically been the same since I was born. And I just could not, hurt innocence and this kind of stuff. It's just, I don't even like killing anything. I can't kill, and I mean, I do what I got to do as a man, you know what I mean? I can kill, but I don't like it, Some people seem to either, almost like it, or they either don't care or they actually like it, which is interesting to me. I'm not sure what that is either. So, anyway, and then, so that's just something for everybody to think about and ponder, meditate on, pray on, read your scriptures on. And then the other thing, which has really been on my mind, and this doesn't really, the politics part, we're going to focus more on local politics. I'm just, with this national politics and stuff like that. We got so much going on here in Minnesota that, we have some really important election coming up here. And we have some really important things to talk about there, about our settler history, about the power structure in this state, about, what we traditionally, how we view ourselves and how we view the DFL, and how we view our relationship with each other and things like that. So I think the narrative is all screwed up, and I want to try to do what I can do to counter that narrative, or to put a more accurate narrative out there. And part of that, though, I do want to address on the political thing, because it's such big news right now, is this whole war in the Middle East, right? So the narrative there, and at least as far as all my online content, the narrative there has become this, it's all the Jews thing. We're back to the Jews rule the world, and the whole Middle East wars were all about the Jews. Were the Jews in on 9/11? Yeah. Israel, MI6 is, what do they call it? The Five Eyes, right? The Anglo-American Alliance. But this, and there's this new internet guy, Professor Zhang or whatever, this Chinese guy, and his theory is that they're going to flip this narrative to try to push all the Jews to go to Israel for the Greater Israel Project, by pushing anti-Semitism again and stuff like that. And, how I feel about Judeo-Christianity, and I definitely don't want Jews taking over any more than I would want even Mormons taking over or Catholics taking over or whatever. It's ridiculous, right? But even though right now we basically have Masons and, European royalty that is, primarily in charge of this crap show. So that's the narrative flip there that I'm not really... Look, Syria was about... The whole thing, if you take... And I wish I could do... hopefully at some point I get this show to where, I'll have, a way of putting video up and maybe I'll have a whiteboard up here like Professor Zhang and we'll talk about things. But if you yourself go and look at a map and you see the Persian Gulf and what's going on there, right? You see Iran and all these, GCC countries, which are all the countries that are allied with us and a part of our petrodollar, okay? The key part that you have to think about is under the Persian Gulf, there is a gigantic gas field. On one side, you have the UAE and Qatar and that stuff. On the other side, you have Iran, okay? And they're both drilled into that from the side, and I'm assuming they have them out in the water too, but the main thing is that they're pulling that gas out of both sides, right? And the whole war in Syria and all of that was about bringing that gas in a pipeline out the Qatari side, through Syria, and then to Haifa, I believe. Might not be Haifa itself, but right there's a refinery in Israel, and then they want to go up and connect to the pipeline system in Turkey, and that goes all the way into Europe, all the way into Germany, everywhere. Then you have all the gas up in the North Sea, covering England and Germany as well, and you basically cut Russia out of the deal. This goes back 25, 30 years, actually, when Russia used gas, and I hate to, maybe be mistaken here, but if my memory serves me correctly, it was over Serbia, and it might have been over Georgia even. I don't know. I don't want to talk out my rear on it. I should have looked that back up again before I wanted to talk smart about the subject. But the point is for Europe not to be as dependent on Russian gas. The whole thing is about the flow of natural gas to Europe. Most of the oil goes other places. That does matter too. But it has nothing to do with the United States of America. Zero. It has nothing to do with us at all. 9/11 was orchestrated by the Five Eyes to get us into that war. Not just Israel. It's not all about Israel. And Israel is undoubtedly a modern crusade. It's a neo-colonial project, right? And you can say whatever you want about it, but you got to understand, the Saudi royal family, what made them royal, right? It's the house of Faisal, the house of Saud, right? They were given land and title by the crown, right? The European royalty is all unified under the crown, right? And the crown is currently England. That's the seat of the crown since the time of the Normans. And I'm not going to go into 2,000 years of history. But these people have been in charge for 2,000 years, right? They're not just suddenly going to be like, why don't we all do what our banker says because they have magic Jew power under their little hat? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous, actually. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And I do see that they're in a lot of controlled positions. They're definitely allied with the Masons. They're definitely a powerful faction within the Anglo-American Alliance that it's called. For that matter, the Catholics are some level of power within that faction as well. But obviously you have the rivalry between the Catholics and the the more the English Mason, like the Anglican and the Mason side of things, and you have the Catholic side of things, right? That's the main division from a while ago. But there's obviously some kind of détente there, and the Jews are obviously involved. But the Jews don't have some kind of magic power. I always ask, like, what's their magic Jew power that gives them power over a bunch of other people? You can't go and work in your company without, a bunch of dudes around there pissing on a fire hydrant and, I mean, so you think that they're all just, yeah, the magic Jews told me so. Or, oh, they got a video of me having sex with an underage girl. Like, they're not all doing it. I mean, do you see that, like, when that Pam Bondi gets up there and she's like, the Dow's at 50,000, why are we even talking about this, right? Like, they don't even, do you see that there's a whole class or group of them in some way? Again, they have to be, they have to know who each other are in some way, but they have a culture among them where, whatever their proclivities are, they're allowed to fulfill them in whatever way that they want. And who are you to ask, as long as the economy's good and blah, 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 So, I mean, you can tell we don't even have proper health care in this country. And those of you who think you do, you don't. I mean, you have, if you're in the government, the military, the police, fire, if you're in the teachers union, some of these groups, then you have, basically, if you are serving the corporation of the United States of America directly, you have better health care as part of that benefits package. But in every other European country and every other country in the world, that's part of the benefits package for everybody, right? Like, it's a basic thing. You can work at McDonald's and you can work as the CEO of the company, and you have the same right to insurance everywhere. And if you're the CEO of the company, you can still buy some private uppity thing and go to a better, uppity hospital or something if you want. And I'm sure get better health care, actually. There is private insurance. But it's not, by the way, I say this all the time, but a lot of people don't understand this. The only socialized medicine in the world is in England, Australia, and Canada. The three main powers of the Commonwealth. They have a national health service. They have the rest of Europe and the rest of the world. I can't speak for the whole world. I don't know the healthcare system in every country. But for the rest of the European Union and things like that, they have insurance just like we do. It's just not, it has nothing to do with your job. It's not attached to your job. They can't pool. They can't charge your company more because somebody gets sick there, or your state more, or whatever. It's an insurance company. There's people in the whole pool. It's one pool. There's only one pool. And they do, and one, is obviously a big legitimate debate between the American system and other systems, is they do have some level of price control, because I know they limit the profit margin, the corporate profit margin of the insurance companies to 6%. So that's the most they're allowed to make. And if they make over that, then they have to pay that back out to their customers in benefits like free healthcare memberships, like health club memberships, or, yoga classes or whatever. Screenings and, different things. They have to pay it back. They don't have to, or whatever. So, and again, not that I'm the expert on their systems, but that was my perception, having lived in Europe, specifically Germany, as a civilian for 5 years and 2 years in the military as well. So I've seen it from both the American military perspective and the civilian on the economy perspective. Totally on the economy, by the way, as a working stiff, not, as an immigrant worker that started through a temp service. So, kind of from the ground up, I learned my trade there. I did my apprenticeship there and stuff like that too. So I just want you all to be aware of that narrative flip. It's not about is the Greater Israel Project a part of that Neo-Crusade project? I'm sure, is Israel's interest in this, the Greater Israel Project. I'm sure. Do they want more Jews to move there? Of course. But do we, as people here, want to participate in anti-Semitism to do that? Like, I don't know what we're doing. I don't know how this is, how the Epstein files come out, and clearly half of the Epstein files are European royalty. And some type of American royalty, by the way, which does seem to pretty heavily include the Jews. And again, how exactly that's structured, does some schmuck like me know? I don't know. But it's obvious to any observer that there's a structure there, right? So, anybody, with half an IQ or half a brain, you can see the structure of it and how they behave. You can see the two-tiered legal system here in the States. You can see the way that our foreign policy is dictated, that we are essentially European vassals. I mean, that's the reality. I don't care if it pisses your American ass off or not. We're sitting here as European vassals. We're their war dogs, and we keep fighting for them, and they keep killing us, and we pay for it. We don't even get proper health care. And it does us no good. We should be here dealing with Cuba and Venezuela and, I'll get into that later. But, it does tie in. It does tie in. We're getting, like, the refugees, not only from this side of the world, but we're getting refugees from that side of the world as well. Everybody knows the stuff going on here in Minnesota. So we'll get into it. Don't don't you worry about that, because that's really the narrative on that. The narrative on that is maybe the most important thing to talk about in the state of Minnesota, certainly right now. Not maybe, it is. This whole narrative flip on what's going on here in Minnesota is crazy. Because what has actually happened here and happened to us as a people has never happened before in history without some type of warfare or invasion, or this is absurd. And you should know that none of those people, none of them are from Minnesota. Not Waltz, Ellison, Omar, obviously, the police chief, Frey, Flanagan is an Ojibwe from Minnesota. And there's there's some historical context there, and they are more allied with the Democrats, but she really plays along with that Marxist garbage, and I'm not going to, but that's a little bit more of a, in-house issue. That's, part of our relationship here as people in Minnesota, not really. But anyway, kind of understand, the natives are mostly allied with the Democrats politically in Minnesota. But she sure seems to be a true believer and wants this adversarial relationship between us, which I think I can, as far as, the settler side of things, I think most of us, my age and younger, viewed that as some of those past tensions as being in the past, and that we have more of there's a lot of intermarriage now. There's a lot of respect for Native culture. There's a lot of resources that go into Native schooling and bringing back language and naming even our schools after, giving them like Native types of names. A lot of stuff. We're very much, it would be really sad to see that take a Marxist flip to a negative when that has been on a really positive path for a long time. And I'm old enough now at 50, and I'm originally from up north, and I do know, obviously, there was some tensions historically. The conflict, 400 years of conflict basically ended here in the state of Minnesota, in southern Minnesota, and New Ulm and stuff. And So it's a tough history, respectable history on their side. Toughest people in the world. But there's some truth to that situation too. That is not this, nobody's illegal on stolen land crap. So it's just, there's true history there. There's real history there that we all know and we all live together and stuff like that. And it's this narrative they're pushing now is gross and hypocritical and orientated towards conflict. It's just despicable. Actually, it's despicable. Changing our flag is despicable. The new flag is despicable. It's disgusting. I'll also add into that has some connotations a lot of people are not understanding also that have to do with, I don't want to overload the whole topic, but 2030 is coming up pretty quick. You'll notice that the star on that flag is actually the same as the 6 stars on the new Chicago flag, which is supposed to be our capital, the capital of 6 states, and there's 6 stars. And the stars on our flag, and they're trying to put a new flag into Ohio too, because we're not with the Dakotas anymore. We're with, like Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio. I think we're still with Iowa. I'd have to look again now. But that flag has other connotations and is also clearly a nod to the Somali community that helped them take over the state. And it could not have happened without an insular community with those numbers. They should not have ever even been brought here, right? They were in Kenya. They're supposed to be refugeed there or somewhere there and ended up here and in Michigan for political reasons. And they have been subsidized. That caused inflation and gentrification in Minneapolis and the surrounding suburbs, and everything that's been going on since Floyd. The real narrative of and context of what's been happening in this state since that time is, historically this would be like this is like stories about the sacking of Rome and Carthage and all this stuff. This could be in a history book. It's crazy what is happening here. And it's crazy that it's happening here in Minnesota. But I am the one who always says, this is the heart of the heart of the heart of the whole world. Minnesota is actually the epicenter. And I don't think a lot of Minnesotans really appreciate that. And, it's not really talked about much. Especially, when these East Coasties and these, East and West East Coasties and Chicago and stuff, they all want to, think they're in the limelight or whatever they're doing over there. Well, the rest of us just, kind of shake our heads in disbelief. So, but we're really the heart of it. We're the heartland, the heart of the heartland of the beating heart of the entire world. Right? That is what Minnesota is. So I guess in that sense, it's not a surprise that it's going on here to that level as well. So, I kind of rambled a lot there, but the essential topic that I was talking about was the narrative over the Middle East. This whole the Jews did it thing. The Jews are not doing anything without the protection of the Anglo-American Alliance and Christians in particular and Catholics in particular and the Crown in particular. If the Jews were not actively protected, they would be just out in the blink of an eye. So you're going to go, so a bunch of Catholics are being told what to do by the Jews, right? A bunch of, the Mormons and the Masons are pretty friendly with the Jews. And I am a Mormon. And that's something that I've, the Judeo-Christian stuff, I have my feelings about that. So, and the evangelicals actually, which is funny because the evangelicals hate the Mormons so much, and they're both Judeo-Christians actually. So it's kind of an interesting thing. I would even, Mormons, I don't know if I would say they're Judeo-Christians, but they're Jamesian Christians, if you know, kind of like James. And anyway, so, yeah. And it's also partly how you look at it. But anyway, so the real narrative there is, when you look at that situation, understand that the original conflict, let's just take it back for a minute. Let's slow it down, and let's take it back for a minute, okay? The original conflict was just like in Venezuela, right? BP, British Petroleum, and the British went into Iran, and they built out their oil infrastructure, found the oil, explored for the oil. Back in a time, too, when that was probably, there wasn't quite the same level of technology as there is now. So, it was probably a lot more hit or miss, a lot bigger investment, a lot harder work, a lot of different, there was a lot to it. And they went in there and developed Iranian oil and that whole side of that gas field, right? And there's actually enough gas in that gas field to provide all of Europe's needs for 100 years. So it's a lot of gas, right? And they developed all that and gave the Iranians 30%. So right now, you can look it up yourself, because I did, and in North Dakota, in the Bakken, right, this oil rush that I was a part of is a big part of the story of my life and stuff. It was very interesting. The rush out there is kind of like the gold rush back in the day, in Dickinson and all that stuff. So, and Williston. Anyway, so that whole oil field out there, North Dakota gets 11.5% total taxes and fees. 11.5%, right? The Iranians were getting 30% from the British. Then they went, oh, no. We want 50-50. And the British were like, no. We made a deal with you. It was 30%. All you're doing is sitting here above the oil. You know what I mean? They probably even, they hired them too. I wouldn't say all they're doing, because they did the work, I'm sure, but that was probably part of the deal. Like, we'll hire your people too and pay them well, and so then they learn the whole thing, and then they're like, yeah, we'll just take it over now. So they really wanted to take it over, but they're like, no, we want half now. And the Brits were like, no, the deal's 30%. That's what you get. You get 30%. And so they went, oh, well, if you won't give us half, then I guess we'll just take the whole thing. You know what I mean? So, if you think the Brits care whether or not they're Muslims or Zoroastrians or Jews or Christians or whatever, you're not playing the same game. So they can't let that fly anymore. That's exactly what Venezuela did to us, by the way. But we didn't let it go for 50 years, right? We let it go for probably like 10 years, or we, got ready for it, and then we took care of business. Because you can't let that happen. And anybody can understand how you just cannot let that happen, right? And then you get this whole Marxist narrative, just like they want to do with the natives, just like they want to do with everybody, honestly, right? So they, they just can't, you just can't let that happen, right? You just can't let that happen is the point. Kind of lost track there for a second, sorry. I got distracted. But anybody can understand how you just can't let that happen, and that it wasn't really about the religious regime. It's about it's about it's about control of the flow of that oil, or primarily the natural gas, actually. But it's about the deal in general. You can't make a deal like that. You go and make all the investment. You got to look at this over hundreds of years, or decades and hundreds of years, not over, a couple of years. As soon as you let something like that go, I mean, you've just lost all credibility. You just, you just can't do it. So, yeah. So that's what the where the conflict started. And then, like I said, then that developed later as it all developed, and the gas field and the flow of the gas, that's all part of a conflict over the flow of gas to Europe. Yeah. So, and that's also the same thing that happened in Venezuela. So anyway, I'm going to move on from that. That was just something that I kind of wanted to cover there. Don't get wrapped up into the... However, that's right. I do want to say, though, that I myself have completely turned against Israel at this point. I don't see that anymore. I do see that that's biblical prophecy kind of coming true. But that doesn't mean that they were ever the good guys in that story. They're actually not the good guys in that story. In the end, all but 144,000 of them get killed anyway. And there's different eschatologies there, so I don't want to get into that. But I'll say this. They committed a genocide in Gaza, and we participated with it. And if you don't like that, I really don't care. I'm a pretty right-wing guy, but I'm not so right-wing that I have to pretend that we didn't just slaughter those people for no reason. And if you think it's okay just because they're Muslim, that's disgusting. And that's just, that's crazy. It's actually crazy. When I served in the military, which is one of the things I'm most proud of in my life, I actually served, I did not go to war. I'm not a combat vet, like I qualify for the VFW, but I am not a combat veteran, as in I've never been in combat, right? I was in a hazardous fire zone in Bosnia, right? So, like, they would shoot at the base and stuff like that, or throw rocks at us and stuff like that. And I had live ammunition, but I wasn't in any firefights. You know what I mean? So nobody's shooting anybody. One dude, there was an SF guy that was at a local bar drinking, getting intel or whatever, and something happened, and they were going to hit him with a hammer, and he shot a guy. And then there was a big riot and stuff like that. So that's the only thing that happened while I was there. While I was there, we were there pulling security while these people cleaned up their own mines and rebuilt neighborhoods and stuff, because we knew that that was a genocide that happened there. We called it a genocide. There was no debate about it being a genocide. And that was only 2 instances. Srebrenica and another one. Might have even been Sarajevo. One of them, but I don't think so. But there was 2 main ones, and I think it was only like 6,000 and 9,000 people. And only, I say. And they separated out all the females. They took all the males 8 years old and above. Just disgusting. The old dudes, everybody, and it's disgusting. And they murdered them all. Right? And that was only 6,000 and 9,000 people. And it was no women and children. And there was no doubt in anyone's mind back then that that was the most disgusting thing that anybody had seen since the Holocaust, right? And that we as America, we don't let that happen. We don't let that happen. And I've always taken pride in having participated in that. And, so for us now here, all these years later, to just participate in a genocide and be like, well, that's not a genocide, or maybe it's not a genocide, or blah, 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 when like 60,000 children have been killed alone, or something like that, not to mention women and everybody else, from an apartheid state that kept those people in like an open-air concentration camp, and what, you don't want to admit that any of that's true because you hate Muslims because of 9/11, which was basically done by the West to make us get involved in a war that, once again, we didn't want to be involved in. The people of this country didn't even want to be involved in World War I or World War II. They had to get us into both of those. So, we don't need any of the oil. We don't need any of the gas. We don't even need any of the fertilizers and stuff. Potash and all that, there's a huge potash supply comes out of Canada. There's another one that comes out of England, but we don't even need that. Let the English and the Europeans keep that. Who gives a shit? We've got everything we need here on this side of the earth. And our biggest problem is Democrats that want to get rid of the cows because they're retarded. You know what I mean? So why are we involved? Why are we fighting it? Why are we paying for it? Why are we taking the blame for it? Why are we covering for genocide? Why are we funding genocide? Why are we, why are we doing any of that? Why are we doing any of that? I don't get it. And I voted for Trump 2 out of the 3 times. And I should have voted for him. I actually regretted not voting for him the second time. I've discussed this on this page before too. Was my protest over health care, but he was, and that's actually the reason that I regretted not voting for him, is he was the peace president. And the reason I voted for him again this time is I'm like, well, at least he's the peace president. You know what I mean? This is not the peace president, okay? And the other thing, you see all these people talking about, oh, maybe we're going to have a treaty, maybe we're this, maybe we're that, blah, 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 blah. Just so you understand, and I'm going to make this as a hard deal, and you can judge my ability to comprehend the world based on this, but we will be going in on the ground. Like, this war is not ending. Like, we're not going to just talk our way out of it, or, Trump setting a hard and fast to-the-minute deadline for Armageddon and then just going like, oh, never mind. It's wild. It's wild. But Iran, by the way, has declared total war. So anybody who understands, and you don't see anybody talking about that, and they keep acting like there might be some kind of, détente or whatever. None of that's going to happen, right? Total war is a specific term internationally, and this is all tied in with the flow of natural gas to Europe. It's tied in with Ukraine and Russia. Iran was supplying drones and weapons to Russia as well. You can view that all as one front, from Ukraine to Russia to all the way up. You can see that as all one front of the war, coming this way east and this way west. You can see the whole thing. And it's not going to end. It's not going to end. So they're in a state of total war. You killed them during negotiations 3 times. Why? Who? I mean, unless you just believe that Iranians are retarded, why are they going to think they're going to negotiate a 4th time? Why? Who would do that? Nobody would do that. That's just, it doesn't even make sense that would happen. They've declared total war. They're going to continue to fight and escalate and keep that closed down. And so the only way to stop that is to invade, So, and it's not Iraq, and it's not Syria or any of that. I mean, this is like probably worse than Vietnam. I don't think people understand, But then again, I will say I thought Afghanistan was going to be worse than it was. Not that it isn't bad. I mean, thousands of troops died, and thousands, tens of thousands were severely wounded. So, but yeah, be prepared for this to be a long war, because it's going to be. So, other updates, we moved that's enough on that anyway. So, and then other updates, we've moved we've moved the animals out to the half acres. So I don't want to get into too much detail on that because, we have conspirators. That's the thing about being online. I don't know. There's people that have, tried to mess with me on that stuff. So anyway, the animals are doing fine. We'll be breeding the new Georgie here pretty soon. And there's not really a whole lot of updates on that. there's really also nothing going on with the dog breeding, though Aaliyah did say she was going to try to get that going again. We'll see how that goes, but we will, when I make some more, I'll make some more farm content here soon. We'll still go out there and film them and do some stuff with that. I know everybody loves to see the goats, and I love to play with them and show them off. So we'll do that again soon. And then also, again, with the church updates, there's really nothing to update there yet. We have big plans for moving forward pretty aggressively on this property and the church this season. And I do want to eventually be doing my, I'll do this weekly podcast, I guess, Facebook Live or whatever. I'll do one weekly from the church at some point, and then we will be doing the weekly church also from there at some point. So, but that, again, that will open with a prayer, and then, hopefully then we'll have a couple of other young men involved, and they'll have their own religious things they want to talk about, or I might have, to be honest with you, I'm not, I don't know, I'm not super religiously active right now, I guess. It's been a tough year or so. But when we get those things going, I'll let you know. And when we get a little closer to getting the, hopefully we'll be progressing towards doing the free nativity play here this season. And, there'll be a lot of work here early in the season. I think we'll probably be too busy, but then maybe later in the season, that'll be some of the content on here. We'll be getting ready for the play and stuff like that. And hopefully that'll all happen this year. We'll see. Probably a tall order, but we'll see how things are going there. And we'll let you know. Now, that was probably not even close to an hour, but that's really all I have for today. Because I don't think I want to get too deep into some of the other stuff here in Minnesota yet today, other than just to say that it's good to see that there's a lot of cities that are voting to put up the old flag and to keep the old flag up and to honor our settler history. And I just want to say I appreciate everybody out there that, even if you're not particularly a part of settler history, maybe, you still have appreciation and respect for our history. And I think that we as a people certainly have made a big effort over the last decades to show a lot of love and respect for other people's culture and history too. So, and that should not have resulted in tearing down our flag and, talking about colonizer this and that and whatever, like the whole real history didn't happen. So, I wonder if I just touch here, if it tells me how long this has been. Maybe if we have enough time, we will go into... I should actually... You know what? I am just going to go into it real quick a little bit. Just so everybody understands. Just real quick. Okay? First of all, originally the Spanish came here. Right? The Spanish originally came here to South and Central America, and then up through the Americas, and they did unfortunately leave a lot of disease. At least that's the official historical narrative. How true that is, what do I know? What do I know if any of it's true? But I am saying that the narrative, as far as we know it, is the Spanish came through here first. And, this was all part of the Louisiana Purchase, and stuff like that. There was the whole, history of Texas and the Alamo in the West. I mean, a lot of people should know this stuff. The populations of people that were in the area primarily west of the Mississippi, but also somewhat east of the Mississippi, up even in the Great Lakes areas and stuff. Some of the eastern natives, but not as much. But a lot of the natives passed away in huge plagues that were supposedly caused by the presence of these Spanish explorers or conquistadors or whatever you want to call them. Some of them, there's definitely some horrible stuff, even according to their own historical records, that they did along the way. I mean, they were basically just like Vikings from back in the day, raiding along the rivers, and sometimes they would just like attack villages and stuff like this. I mean, it was crazy times. Nobody's saying otherwise. But first of all, they were Spaniards. They weren't us. They were Spaniards. And they went through there, and a lot of people passed away at that time. And then later you have the English colonizers, right, that did colonize along the East Coast. And actually, it was the French who colonized up in Canada originally, and then down into Minnesota. I hate to admit this myself, but, you know, there's some people who choose to say that Paul Bunyan was a Frenchman. You know, obviously, we all know he was a Norwegian giant that came here long before the French. So, you know, but he might have originally been a Frenchman, they might say. I don't know. And there was also, you know, Louisiana along the Mississippi there. You know, that's all French stuff, too. You know, so it was the Spanish and the French. And then they came, and yeah, they colonized along the coast there, and then spread west, right? And there were a lot of natives in that area from the Mississippi to the East Coast. And there was hundreds of years of warfare there, also up into Canada and stuff. The point is, here in Minnesota in particular, okay, there was essentially nobody here. And the Lakota came in from the west, and the Ojibwe came in from the east. I believe they were pushed out by the Iroquois from up around the Hudson. And like when my settler ancestors came here, okay, this is settler time now. This is way past colonial time. This is settler time. They came here to settle this land, you know, the Oregon Trail time, the covered wagon time, right? It's also a big part of Mormon history, by the way, is settler history. It's a little bit different than colonial history. I do have, you know, colonizers in my, you know, I've been here, my family's been here for 400 years, some of them, right? The least have been here from the 1800s, right? There's on my Norwegian and Swedish side, which I'm mostly Norwegian and Swedish, but we mostly came here in the 1800s. But through my grandma, they have some other bloodlines that go all the way. Anyway, the point is, so yeah, you have some colonizer history there. You have slave history, all that stuff. You know, I'm not going to do a 2-hour episode about that whole history. But when we came in here and settled this land, right, the Ojibwe and the Lakota were at war with each other. They were killing each other. They weren't sitting here living here in peace, and it wasn't either of their lands. They were fighting over it because everybody who had been here previously, I don't even think they know who was here. Maybe they know who was here. Do they even know who was here? Before, you know, since like the Clovis people or the mound culture, how long ago was that? 1,000 years or something? When we originally came here, by the way, because the Kensington runestone is real, and they actually found, so there's ships that are, this is a little side note, but there's ships by, what do you call it, like a little inlet or whatever, a fjord in Scandinavia there, where they had sunk some ships to try to block the fjord, and they go down there and analyze that lumber that built the ships, and that lumber was only here in North America and Canada and stuff for the ships from those Scandinavian boats, right? So we've been here we've been here a long time too, just so you know. So, and anyway, and even there, natives and Scandinavians, we are all sons of Japheth. I don't know if you know this whole. I'd like to do a whole episode about this because people don't really understand the history either of where Noah was and how Japheth came down and settled on the Black Sea, and some of his descendants went east, who were also, by the way, the 13 tribes of the Hmongs, who are commie killers and should all be Republicans, and actually fought with us against commies. That's why they're here, just so you know. But those are the eastern sons of Japheth, and then we went across the northern shore of the Black Sea. We followed the Allfather up the Dnieper and eventually all the way to Uppsala. So, we're all northern sons of Japheth. And then there was, I don't want to, again, we'll go into that whole history another time. But, like the Inuit and stuff, or Inuit, right? And the Inuit, you talk about Greenland, the Inuit that are there now, also are not from there. They're not from there. They took that over. At first it was the Inuit 1, then it was the Inuit 2, and then it was, they have another name for these, the Inuit 3 or whatever. They're not the Inuit 3, they're some other Inuit. Came from like Canada and took it over again too. So when we settled here, this land was already disputed and empty. The Lakota, and go out in the Dakotas, look at the land they have over there. Well, everybody's all complaining and stuff like that. They actually have some of the best land you'll ever see. And for per capita, they have tons of land for how many people they are. Same with, the Red Lakers. That's, that's beautiful land you guys got up there. It's really nice. And they've got all kinds of nice land all over around the state. And they got their casinos, and they sell the weed now and stuff too. So, they got a lot going on. And, we got a lot going on together. Same with the Hmongs. So my point is, and then like there was another guy on Facebook sharing some poem about blah, 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 trying to say, the native on the flag, there's some derogatory poem that goes along with that. So I didn't even read the poem because I don't need it. This is disgusting. If you want to look at it and project some type of negative connotation onto that, that's on you. That's a narrative inside of you. That's not a narrative that's inside of me or my ancestors or my family. I have family, not to be that guy, but, I got family that are in relationships with natives. I've had native friends. I like natives. My whole family likes natives, and natives like us. My uncle, anyway, about him, but he actually taught at a native school for a while. He's a white dude. He taught some kind of something there. I don't know what he was doing. I mean, he's not a teacher. I don't know what he's doing, like gym or something there. Or he had some kind of gym at the job at the native school or whatever. So, yeah, there's no reason for there to be any conflict or animosity between natives and settlers. There's no reason for anybody to look at that flag and the native on that flag and think that's something bad. You know what I mean? Or good. You don't have to fantasize this, I hate to use the term, but that's the term that's, accepted from the noble savage thing, or whatever. I'm a savage. I don't care. But I'm just saying, like, you don't have to project that onto anybody either. People are people. But the truth is that Scandinavians and natives and all northern whites, right, and natives have lived together forever. Forever we've lived together, as long as, there's the Sami people in Scandinavia, there's Inuit in Scandinavia and in Russia and stuff like that too. So we've always lived together. And the Hmong are commie killers. So why would any Hmong people look at my flag, our flag, by the way, our flag, and go, oh, that's the flag of the colonizer or some shit, some garbage that some moron like Tim Walz from Nebraska has to say? Who is he? Who is Tim Walz? He's not from here. He's nothing to do with us. This is a garbage human being. This is a garbage human being. And and we're supposed to accept that this outside invasive force comes, takes over the Minnesota DFL, brings in a mercenary political force from some refugee camps in Africa, subsidizes them, pays them for their votes, helps and supports them in defrauding billions of dollars. Well, we all our taxes go up, our wages don't go up to match, and we get hammered by inflation and gentrification. Well, you bring in and subsidize voters so you can take over our state and rob our treasury blind, take us from an $18 billion surplus to wiping out our entire treasury, and then change our flag and call us racist. We're going to change your racist flag. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You're going to disrespect my grandfather, my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather, my great-great-grandmother, my grandmother, who, bless her, angelic soul, is still alive, and is like Mother Teresa would be like, that's a good chick. That's a good chick. I should try to live up to that. That's what Mother Teresa would be saying. Just telling you right now. So, and some people are going to show up here, be here for 5 minutes and tell me, F them. This is ours now. We're putting our flag up here now. You Johnny-come-lately scumbags come when the table's already set and stuff your face full and claim the house is your own. After other people came, built the house that you're in, hunted and grew and prepared the food that you're stuffing your belly with. And then you're going to take and tear down our flag and put your flag up and tell us our flag represents racist scumbags. When has that ever happened in history before? When has that ever happened in history before? Why don't you ask yourselves that? Well, you go and vote Democrat. That ain't your grandma's DFL. That ain't your grandma's DFL. So, if you're looking at that flag and you see something divisive there instead of a representation of our true history together as the people of Minnesota, right? Not under the rule of Chicago. That's your choice. You're seeing that. You're seeing what you want to see there, because that flag represents all of us. And in this upcoming election, you cannot look. If you're not a Republican, I've been a Republican, so no Democrat's going to sit here and listen to me tell them, hey, you should vote Republican. So I'm not doing that. But I'm telling you should not vote DFL, Democrat, period, this year. Really, for a whole complete election cycle, you have to expel these people completely from your party. They're going after the cows. And I don't understand. Maybe the Catholics are right about that demon thing when it comes to these commies and the cows. They always go after the farmers. They always go after cows. Like, look at the entire history of mankind from the time we came down from Ararat to now. And, like, having cows separates you from not having cows, okay? It's a big difference. You know, look at the history of the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot and all that stuff, right? Do you know that history? Do any of you have taught history anymore? Do you care? Do you learn any of it? I don't know. They always go kill the farmers. Look at the commies in China. They killed all the farmers. They kill all the farmers. They take all the land, and everybody starves and dies. These people are going after the cows. They're going after the cows like they're possessed with a demon. How can you be a Minnesotan, whether native or Hmong or Scandinavian or German, how could you be a Minnesotan and support anybody against farming and farmers? I just don't understand it. You know? Do you see this thing today? Car tabs are up to like $1,300 for some people and stuff like this. $1,300, or I think last time I got tabs, they were $4 something for my stupid little car. For the privilege to drive a car, you buy a car and you get to pay a tax for having the car every year, for permission to use the King's roads, on top of your gasoline tax. And all your property taxes and all your utilities going up 30% in 5 years, in less than 5 years. When they went up, you guys, I know you all experienced it. It all went up in like a matter of, it was probably 3 years. To be fair, it took probably 3 years from when it started going up. And everything went up 30%. Everything. We all saw it. It all went up 30%. And you want to pay for another war? Because that's what we're paying for. That's why we don't have health care. That's why all our money is getting inflated. That's why we have all the debt. We're taking on the debt to pay for wars that aren't for us. They're not for us. They have nothing to do with us. You know, so just some things to think about. The Jews didn't do it. But they did do it. You know, the Jews do stuff too. But they didn't. It's not the Jews did it. The royalty is still there. The American royalty is still there. You know, the supposed 13 families or whatever. You know, the Masons are still there. Let's not get involved. If we want to get involved, look, from my perspective, if they all wanted to go to Israel, go. Well, we got quite a few of them here. You know, they say it's was it St. Jewish Park or whatever, St. Louis Park or whatever. You know, so they're here. They could go if they want. Go. Take the Somalis with you because they need to go. 80-some%. We brought all these. First of all, refugees are supposed to go to the country next to the closest, most peaceful place where they can be. And they brought them all here from camps like in Kenya and stuff like that. And they can go back. They can go. They can go back. They don't need to be here. And they're all in. So we're going to have 100. And by the way, it's not 100,000. It's way more than 100,000. They're lying about that. So we have 100,000 plus people where 80-some% of them are all on welfare. Are they even supposed to be on welfare? They all are subsidized and they're all participating in defrauding the state. Right? I mean, you're talking billions and billions. How many of their households are participating in it? They haven't spoken once about it. Who's doing all the fake signups for the autism? That's the one they don't even want to talk about, the autism one. Because you have all the families that are faking like their kids are autistic. But we know that 80-some% of them are on welfare. We know that they've participated as a community, an insular community, in the fraud. We know that they just need to go. And I've talked about this before on this channel. My personal opinion is, first of all, no opinion. No matter what should not be done in any kind of violent way. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm not even saying, I'm not really, well, I kind of am. I mean, look at what, my tendency is not to want to judge them as a community anyway, but it's like a monolithic thing that's happened. It's a tough situation, but the point is that it's a refugee population. You can take away their status and just send them back to wherever they went from. My personal opinion is the way that should be done. You can't do it in any way where you're taking their property or they're losing their property or anything like that. So I think that the state should give each individual one of them a shipping container. So, if you're a family of 5, you get 5 containers, and then you can fill that with whatever you want. And all you bleeding heart liberals who are like, oh, but it would be great if the state was half Somali. You can give them all your stuff. Stuff you would sell in a garage sale or whatever, or get rid of whatever you want. You could donate it all there, bring it all there, and they can fill their containers with it, guns too. They should take a bunch of guns and stuff with them. Furniture, whatever, and then they can use the shipping containers to build structures and stuff where they're at too. So you should send them all back with a shipping container apiece for them and give them 90 days and make sure that they can take their cash and stuff back. And then I do think, we could do it in a positive way where we stay in a positive relationship with them. And there are a lot of Ethiopians here as well, and those are Christian Ethiopians and stuff, and they can kind of intermediate between there and here so that we can continue to have some type of social and financial mutually beneficial relationship with them. Also, for everybody who's hating on them really bad, and I get why, believe me, I'm mad too. I'm mad, but it's mostly our politicians who are at fault for what's happened here. They've participated, obviously, but it's really the fault of this traitorous scumbags from here that have participated. And also you should know that they did have a legitimate beef. I don't know, a lot of you maybe don't know the history of why that all happened there. But it wasn't a bunch of these famines and blah, blah, blah. And why they're pirates, actually, is because they were fishermen. And they fished there. And that was their whole economy. And then corporate trawlers and fishing trawlers, with the globalization and everything, they came in and they were fishing the international waters there. Which, they're well, we have a right to do that. It's international waters. And then the U.S. Navy was protecting those ships because that's what we do, is protect that area, protect the international waters. And basically their fisheries got wiped out, which wiped out their whole economy. That's what actually happened. And that's why they became pirates, because they originally were attacking the fishing ships, fishing vessels. So again, it is what it is, but it is also not this, Trump narrative and all this, the racist narrative that, they're just a shit country or whatever. And yes, they're, apparently, supposedly not, it is a failed country, and it is, it is what it is. I don't want to get into any of that, but they did have, what they did have going, got wrecked by, in all fairness also, though, don't think it was U.S. ships. I mean, we were protecting it because that's what the Navy does, but that's what we did. That was our part of the deal globally. I think all the ships were Asian ships and stuff, Asian, probably Japanese, to be honest with you. Probably the Japanese ruined their life. So the Japanese should give them an island. They got a bunch of islands over there in Japanistan. Give them an island over there. So that's my 2 cents on it, but there's no way that we as a voting population can allow our flag to be taken and that garbage flag to be put up, which is clearly like a half Somali, half New World Order, Star of the North, or whatever. Go look at that new flag that the Cook County, the new Cook County flag. And go look at it, and look, it's the same star. And it's on I think it's in Ohio. Just look up the star too, and you'll see that it's on a couple of other flags. And this has something to do with your whole New World Order commie bullcrap. So, either way, you can't vote Democrat while this is going on. You just can't do it. So vote something else. This Lisa, the Republican candidate, it's probably going to be Lisa Demuth. And, she's multi-ethnic, but also from a settler family. She has respect for settler history, or she's half settler herself. And her husband's like a preacher, and, they're in a small rural Minnesota, small town preacher and stuff like that. So check her out. Our local guy, Nathan Wessenberg, I really trust him. He seems like a really, really solid guy, a really genuine guy, definitely not one of them. And he supports her as well. He's the one who recommended her to me. So, plus she just seems to be like kind of the candidate that's, it's already kind of, that's good. That's who it's going to be, probably. So, and then as I've also discussed on this channel, Scott Jensen really turned out to be a disappointment. So he's really something. So I don't know what happened there. Yeah. So I think this is a good first episode. We will see you next Tuesday at 5 o'clock for sure. I'm going to do every Tuesday at 5. And then we'll just see how that goes for a while. We'll do some commentating on, the weeks. We'll open with it. Like I just said, or I said in the opening, we'll just close the same way. We'll start with a spiritual idea to think about. We'll go over the week's politics and narrative issues. And then hopefully have some farm content and some church updates, and church and nativity play updates as things continue. So, also, I do want to add also, locally, there's Tad Erickson, Tad Erickson. You can find him. I shared him on my feed as well. He is running for Crow Wing County Commissioner 2nd District, or number 2 or whatever. And we're supporting him here at the Norseman clan. So we'll be supporting him also in the upcoming elections. Check him out. And one of the topics, I actually talked to him last week, and one of the things they were interested in, they had that meeting about the homeless shelter. Don't know how everybody feels about that. I gave him my 2 cents, which was I don't like the government interfering with the charity at all. I think they should be allowed to do what they want and should be permitted for the year. I live down here in downtown Brainerd. We actually even have the soup kitchen not far from me here, right over here. Homeless people and people that have some charitable needs, are around the community here a lot. And they're a regular fixture here, and they don't bother any of us. And I've never heard anybody complain about them. And they've never done anything. And they do occasionally pass away here in the woods. 1 or 2 of them pass away every year. And we have ladies that park around here and things like that. Nobody ever gets bothered that I've been aware of. And from my perspective, I don't think it does any Republican any good to be in a position against helping some of the less fortunate in our society. And also, from a purely selfish point of view, one of the main benefits package, elements of the benefits package of the lakes area is all of our state parks and all our public land and stuff out here, which we all really love to enjoy. We love to go on drives and walks and different things. And a lot of times, there's the ladies are out walking in the woods, things like that. So that's not the place where we want the homeless to be, right? So they will, if you're pushing them out of town, and even now, if you go out, you will see that sometimes they will set up camps out in the woods and they leave a mess. And it's a very uncontrolled and unsafe environment. And, in the woods here locally and here right in town, it's also, not the greatest place, but they're going to have to go somewhere. And my thought on the subject is, as long as they're in town here and maybe even in the local woods here, our police can keep an eye on them. And they do keep an eye on them. And they find them when they pass away. So do you really want, them all over in the woods out here in the rural area? I don't think so. And I think pretty much everywhere, a downtown area is the place where those services are most often provided. And again, I don't want them to have to be, I know some of, people view them as, they're all drug addicts or all this or that, and they need to be like controlled and da-da-da-da. That's actually not true. Some of them are clearly drug addicts. Some of them, and alcoholics, by the way, which is a drug, in case any of y'all were confused, which many of you are. Severe drug. And some of them are alcohol addicts or other drug addicts, some. But most of them appear to have mental health issues and other health issues. And, and again, are harmless, really. And a lot of them are female, by the way, around here. And older females and, so I don't want them cracked down upon or bothered in any way. And I want the shelter allowed to help them in any way that they wish. And I think that they should be, mostly welcomed, or at least not harassed too much. But I also think then we should very strongly support our local police to keep an eye on them and have the judgment to know, again, the police don't need to be out of control either, but our police here are very, they're good kids. A lot of them are local boys, and, it's not the same thing as some other places. So we're blessed with some really good law enforcement around here. I know some people say, different or whatever, but that's my personal experience and view of it is they're, very good and reasonable people. So I think we just need to trust them to deal with it however they feel is necessary, and if there's a bad apple in there, then, that's not for us to worry too much about. Let them take care of that. So, so that's my feeling about that. All right. Anyway, so other than that, again, get out there, support, in my opinion, your Republican candidates. But please, just as Democrats, my fellow Democrats, my family, my friends, people I love and care about, recognize it for what it is. Bad situation. And understand that on the Republican side, too, Trump was our response to an equally bad situation. We were like, yeah, this, we overthrew our douchebags, or we tried to. Now we're in a war with Iran, so Lindsey Graham is I don't know, whatever. So, but we made our effort. We didn't, you know, you can say a lot of stuff, but you know, I think all of you understand that Trump was kind of our bull in the china shop, and you guys need the same, because what is going on over there? And Bernie Sanders ain't it. Unfortunately, I thought he would be for you too, but you know, that guy didn't work out. So big disappointment there. Big disappointment all around. You know, we need, you know, this is only a two-party system. You know, a lot of Europe's multi-party system. Kind of better in a lot of ways, but we have a two-party system, you know, and, you know, we need something viable over there. What's going on over there? What, you guys got to take control of that. And you got to just literally anybody. This is my personal litmus test for you guys, and I know you won't appreciate it, but you know, you should have a questionnaire, and if anybody on your side at any point in time ever thought that cow farts were a serious issue, no, out, it's out. Just get them out of your party. Just, if they're into cow farts. I'm not even going to get into it. Cow farts, for the love of him. Anyway. All right. So, love you all. Peace and happiness. Have a great week. And thanks for viewing if you view it. I'd appreciate it. Thanks for sharing if you share it. I'd appreciate it. So, yeah, like, comment, and share. All that stuff really helps a lot. And I appreciate it. Thanks. Bye.